Welcome to a special edition of Faith in Politics. As we are days away from Hawaii's primary election, we want to remind you of the importance of voting. In this special edition of Faith in Politics, McKethan and Adriel Lam discuss voter integrity. Can we trust our election process? Let's join Mac and Adriel as they discuss the difference between voter and election fraud and why this issue makes voter turnout even more important.
So you have seen and witnessed voter fraud. Can you expound on that?
Soon after the 2020 general election, I had some questions, so I asked for the voter rolls. I went for, in my area, I live in Kaneohe. I looked through the voter rolls for Kaneohe, and I came across this registered voter by the name of United States Hawaii. That's first, middle, and last name. Now, as far as I know, there's no one by the last name of Hawaii in the entire state of Hawaii except for this one person. There's Hawaii, lots of them, but there's no Hawaii. So I looked into this. I did go to the registered residence, ask the owner, is there such a person by the name of United States Hawaii here? No. Did you receive mail for United States Hawaii? No. Did you see a ballot for United States Hawaii? No. But in the 2020 general election, United States Hawaii is recorded as voting by mail in the 2020 general election. So if this registered voter never lived at this residence, never received mail, how is a mail-in ballot recorded for this person?
Amazing. What about other countries? Do they have the same problems?
I think you'll find voter fraud everywhere, where everyone wants to take advantage of the system. There's always cheaters or people who can work around existing setups. There's always a vigilance, and there should always be a effort to minimize that kind of thing going on.
So where have you actually witnessed this in other countries, or have you?
Yeah, as a military diplomat and a political military analyst, spent a lot of time looking at different countries, and we've seen things in Venezuela. We try to do our efforts in Iraq. One of my focus areas was China-Taiwan issue. And the Taiwan elections, it's a full-fledged democracy. They made a tremendous transition from a command economy and authoritarian regime to and what we call as a full-fledged democracy today. It was a difficult process, but we got to it because of the interest of promoting democracy in as opposed to what we're seeing across the straits in the People's Republic of China. In watching the Taiwan elections, there's always concern of foreign influence, manipulation. So in Taiwan, you have one of the most technologically advanced countries in the world. They make our semiconductors, but they face the highest cybersecurity threat coming from China and many other actors or non-state actors. But they conduct their elections all by paper ballots, and they hand count their results. They do not use electronics. They can do all those 14 million ballots and count them all within 6 hours.
Wow.
And it's a very open process. In the morning, they assemble the cardboard boxes in full view of everyone. They come and fill out their paper ballots, put into the boxes, and they seal it. At the end of the day, they have a room full of people. They pull each ballot out, raise it in the air, read it out loud so everyone can hear it and see it. And someone on a whiteboard puts it on the whiteboard where everyone can hear it and see it. And they can see the entire tally of those counts. And it's posted on the internet where everyone can see it and validate what was in that room and on the internet. And that's fully transparent counting and tallying process.
Something that we definitely don't have here.
It's something we could do.
Oh, really?
If we had the volunteers and the effort or the political interest to do that.
There's voter fraud and we have election fraud.
Right.
And Is that an issue in America?
A lot of people believe it is. Latest Rasmussen poll says that 83% of Americans thinks election integrity is a concern. 55% have said that cheating affected the results of the 2020 elections. There is a growing concern in every sector of America of what is happening to our elections. And the largest concern is, why is there no investigation into this past elections as opposed to the many reports we had in previous elections? Any questions of what happened in 2020 is being pushed aside as there's no voter fraud, there's no election fraud. That's not what we've said in any past elections. I've always been questions about voter fraud, always been questions about election fraud. Did it make a difference?
Voter fraud and election fraud. Obviously, they're two separate issues, yeah?
Yeah, voter fraud is specific to the voter, the individual person who falsified their registration, falsified their eligibility, falsified their name or their residence. That's voter fraud. That's
something
the
like
individual.
the United States Hawaii person?
I think that's, it could be both here and there, because as far as we know, this person does not exist. So that's
Right.
not voter fraud.
I see what you're saying.
And did the actual ballot actually exist too? Was there even a ballot? Because we've asked about this voter, and you could probably easily go to find the envelope where the ballot was signed for. They do separate the ballot from the envelope when you count it. So, but they should still have the ballot envelope was voted on, but they have not produced it. Is that where's the physical evidence of this ballot even exists?
And so election fraud is what?
Election fraud is more systematic. It's about influencing electors, influencing decision makers, influencing voters. You can influence voters, but you can't influence how the system is done. And it's also officials who do not do what they're supposed to be doing. That's all part of election fraud.
You said systematically.
Right.
So can you give an example of what that would look like?
If someone was running for office and you try to convince them don't run for office, you pay them to not run for office. That's election fraud. If you pay someone to do something to be an elector, or pay someone to vote a certain way, that is also election fraud. Everyone should have the free conscience to either run for office or make their decisions at the ballot box. One of those examples of election fraud too is that's coded in law is if you provide false information about the election, the time and place, where you're redirecting people to a place that's not the elections, or say that someone has withdrawn from a race and that influenced their decision to how they vote. That is election fraud.
So how does lobbyists play in this? Is that more technical? When lobbyists come on and want to influence a candidate, hey, we'll vote for you if you such and such, could that be considered election fraud as well?
There's language in there that talks about how someone votes as an elector and if there's consideration behind that, if there's money, funds, or benefits. So it's not just money, it's maybe perks, things that they receive in exchange for that.
How can we better the system, or let's say recommend a better way or approach to reduce the risk of us having to deal with voter and or election fraud?
The largest challenge in our election system now is there's voter apathy. And so we have a lot of people who just don't vote and don't get involved. There's less people that are interested parties in how our government works. And when you have that kind of situation, elected officials, for one, only have to influence a certain small group of people or address a certain small group of people to get what they need. Politically, for political capital, for their votes, it's a smaller set. When they have to address the people, then that's a greater challenge. That's who you have to answer to. So if more people are getting involved in voting or checking their votes too, making sure that the voting records are accurate, I think we have a better accountability in our system. We have examples of certain people who, they say, I never vote, I don't register to vote, but they're registered in the system.
So by them not checking, even if they're not going to vote, they don't even register, yet someone else can register them as a voter.
Right. People are being registered to vote, and then in some cases, their vote is recorded. Whether we know if they voted or not, that's a question. We've been looking into that. We've had a couple examples. I think we need the public to be involved, be engaged, be a good citizen, do your duty as a voter to not only vote, but also check that your vote is recorded accurately.
In regards to that, we're often asked the question about Christians voting. Should we vote? Should we vote? Behind the pulpit is not the venue often to express all those things, and rightfully so. Yet and still, as Christians, we're part of the society, and as a duty, I agree with you that we should take hold of it because, like you said, people are taking advantage of it if we're not registering to vote or getting involved. Now, as far as registering, is there a registry where the candidates understand how many people are registered in a certain sector that drives their attitude and behavior to only, cater to a certain group?
Right.
Do they have that visibility at all?
Yeah, they can buy the registration rolls. Information has their address, has their past 2 years voting records, and that's for purchase. Honolulu County charges $750 each time you get it, whereas Maui and Big Island, it's about $100. In some places, it's free. In the mainland, there's many places that post it online, so you can just check it online. You don't have to pay for it. The difference here is you may have the information, but there's also a lot of data companies that do analysis, and so they'll go through all the commercial databases and mailing lists and filter out, how this person may vote or their perception. So, there is a lot of that analysis going on, which is, I think it's their prerogative to do so, to target who they want to address or what kind of issues are within their jurisdiction, their electorate. They have that option for them. Like I said, when low voter turnout and you're responding to a smaller constituency, the louder voices are the ones that get your attention. Right. And so if your constituency is not speaking up, there's a lot of lobbyists out there who can fill up your time, give you a lot of information that you're looking for, but where is it coming from? Is it coming from the people within your jurisdiction, or is it coming from someone who has a lot of influence and preparation time to give you something and tell you this is a better way to go?
So how can we ensure that our registration is proper? I mean, what tools and mechanisms that we have or you would recommend? For
Honolulu or the state of Hawaii, we have an online voter registration system. Get online and check your status of your registration, and it'll pop up what's in the database. It's a good tool. I'd recommend, double checking with calling the county clerk also and asking about it. The online registration tool has been very helpful, but there's also questions on a quarter of our voter registrations are within the last 5 years. Pretty high number, given, we've got a aging population, a diminishing population, but we have so many new voter registrations within such a short time period. I think the elections office is looking into it. They said, well, there's different issues about updates and maybe some people renewed, but that's also a question, like, how do we have such a high number of new voter registration? It's good that if people haven't registered to vote before, that they're newly registered. That's a good story. But we also need to look at our database quality.
We all go out and we vote. There's a plethora of candidates.
Right.
I mean, this cycle alone, there's a bazillion, it seems like. Where do we get the information about the candidate to make an informed decision on how to vote, with the exception of trying to attend each and every event that they have? Because most of them, you don't really hear anything from. You just see them on the side of the road with the signs up, vote for so-and-so. But how do we get to even know who the candidate is and what their policies that we would be voting for?
You look at some of the candidates, some of them are very serious candidates, some of them are looking for an opportunity for exposure. And so it depends on the candidate how much they want to put their information out. Some have websites, some don't even have emails. The Office of Elections does publish a roll of information that the candidates has provided when they filed for candidacy. You can look at it. It's kind of a little involved process to do 3 or 4 clicks on the website to find that. But there are other organizations out there like Vote 411, League of Women Voters, Hawaii Family Forum, and the political parties that do put their candidates' information on the website and give their own web pages, contact information. Don't see here in Hawaii, I've seen in Los Angeles County, is they do voter information guides. Before the election takes place, they give you a sample ballot in the mail, what your ballot will look like, but also give the candidates an opportunity to write something to give to the county to put together a booklet. It's their option whether they answer it or not, and they can say, give them a paragraph or two to write about their candidacy, and then it goes to all the voters. It's a little more involved. It takes some funding for that, but I think that's a good way to have a free and fair process of getting information out to the voters. Here in Hawaii, we do have, the Office of Election does have an option on their website to look at your ballot. Click on it, put your island, put your address, and it'll show you what your ballot will look like.
The information provided of the dates and times of when to vote, it's not very transparent. It seems always hidden, and you got a date, but it's just kind of fuzzy. Why is it not promoted even from the Capitol? Like this is such and such. It's just kind of like, do you think that's to kind of keep the only those in the know kind of sort of?
Gets to a political question of, who benefits from the time and date of election. You see that in international politics of timing of, if they recall the parliament, whether it's earlier or later, the timing of the season, if people are going to vote, come out to vote or not. We set our primaries here in Hawaii. So we have a set date for August 13th for the primary coming up. I think somewhat people take issue to is it's not election day anymore, it's election season. Because for 3 weeks before August 13th, people already have their ballots, and they can cast their ballots, put it in the deposit box or mail it in. So people are already making decisions about their candidates 3 weeks before the due date. Where's the fairness of people who make their decision on July 25th as opposed to August 3rd or August 10th? Because information changes
right
during that time. Something can come up. And if someone has already voted before then, what if they want to change or vote differently? A lot of people say we do need to have an election day because that's a day when everyone makes their decision on the same time, under the same conditions, under the same information, and we have a free and fair vote that way.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. It's I don't want to say it's all over the place. Yeah, the dates are set, but it's just such a variable that at the last moment, now you realize this information about candidate X, and it's
Right.
like, and it changes your attitude, but you've already voted.
Right.
Because it was easier for you to get it done and over with. So, yeah, that's a driving factor that I think that needs to be changed. But how would we go about making a suggestion or even that change reality? Is there ways that we as the voters can say, hey, the citizens, hey, we need to change this, just to your point?
For a lot of people, if you want to vote on election day, I think go ahead, vote on election day, and make your decision then. For those that already voted, especially those who think they might have changed their minds after they already put their vote in, those people need to speak up about, what the process is.
Great conversation with Adriel and Mac. Remember, guys, it's our opportunity to influence our culture. For such a time as this, get down to the many locations and register, then vote. We encourage you to personally drop it off to be sure your ballot counts. You're watching Faith in Politics. We'll be right back.
Aloha! August 13th is Hawaii's primary election. The goal of a primary election is to eliminate all but one person per party per race. For example, in the race for governor, only one person from the Republican Party, Democratic Party, and so on will move on to the general election. State and federal races are based on parties. You must choose to vote in only one party. If you want to vote for a particular Republican candidate in the governor's race, then you must only vote for other Republicans in the other races. If you vote for more than one party, your entire ballot will be spoiled. So in the county and OHA, Office of Hawaiian Affairs races, there are no parties and is open to all voters regardless of party affiliation. Your primary ballot should have arrived by mail, so you can mail it or deposit it in a drop box near you or deliver it to Honolulu or Kapolei. Did you know that you can vote in person from now until August 13th? We highly recommend this because if you choose to vote in person and you accidentally make a mistake by voting in more than one party, the voting machine will spit your ballot out and you will be able to try again with a new ballot. Voting in person really is the most secure way to vote and gives you assurance that your ballot actually counted. I'm Laura Burbidge for One Impact Hawaii, reminding you to make sure Your ballot counts.
Welcome back to Faith in Politics. Have you registered to vote? How about those in your circle of influence? Have you encouraged them to vote? It's really important that we do. If you think it's too late, you still have time. Available now up to August 13th. If you received your ballot, I encourage you to personally drop it off. For now, let's get back to the discussion about voter and election fraud with Mac and Adriel.
We're equal shareholders in this government. Equal protection of law give us equal value in our votes. One vote, one person, one vote. And if you look at the state of Hawaii, we have a $15 billion annual budget, roughly 600,000 voters. That is, our shareholder value as a voter in the state of Hawaii is $25,000 per vote. If you're not exercising your option to vote, you're leaving that decision to someone else. You're giving a proxy to someone else to vote for you of that $25,000. So that homeless person who down on his luck or is not able to pay taxes, his shareholder value is $25,000. The billionaire or millionaires who paid millions in taxes, their shareholder value is $25,000. If we don't exercise our right to vote, it lets people who don't like that equal shareholder value to influence others to make that more beneficial to them beyond one person, one vote.
That was going to segue into my next question. Is it important that we do vote?
It's very important that we do vote. I mean, as Christians, I think we've been given a gift here to live in the United States of America. The history of the world has been authoritarian government, power from above, kings and queens who take their divine right from God. But here in America, we are the sovereigns. We as individuals get to have a say in our government, and we get to collectively come and vote and give our consent to be governed by those who represent us and are elected to represent us. If we don't do that, we give that right back to people who want to go back to the old model of claiming their authority, claiming their divine rights, and telling us what to do.
And that's what we're seeing today to some degree.
Right.
Exactly. And that's and I tell people all the time, I don't sit here and spend my life on voting and trusting in the government. I trust in the true and living God. As a citizen, though, there is an aspect and duty that we have, an obligation. And understanding who the true living God is, then you can understand better how to determine what candidate to look for and the policies that align with what the Word of God says should drive our decision-making process when it comes to voting.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that gets misconstrued when we're talking political, the arena and the Christian, and how it converges in this area. If more people voted, would there be a less influence on voter fraud?
I think it's accountability, right? If the more people that are involved in taking charge and being involved in the process and they're checking, there's less of a chance that you have people that don't check or people that part of the electorate that can be taken advantage of. It's like security, right? I was an Army officer, so initial training was patrol operations, and everyone had their own sector. If everyone's vigilant, you'll catch something. Sectors that intersect, so you can more than one person can see part of it. But if there's one person that's not doing their job, that's where vulnerabilities are. And so if we have half the electorate that's not involved, disinterested, that's half of your sector, security perimeter, that is vulnerable for whatever any bad actor wants to do.
So the more people that vote, you have people that are required now to look at the information that's coming in.
Right.
And so that prevents the small amount of data from being skewed so greatly that it can influence the election. It's a thing that I think gets a lot of heat, a lot of press. This is a good venue to be able to discuss that. But like you said, I agree. It is important that we exercise that right for the reasons that you mentioned and others as well that we can't get into in this session. But it is really important. And I think we should do that and be well informed on who we're voting for and why we're voting.
Right.
Policies. I don't know how many times I say that. I think I say it every single time. But it's the policies that matter.
Right.
And when we don't, we relinquish that control to them to write in policies to control us.
Right.
I guess the last thing is dealing with voting is how would you go about telling someone, well, I guess let me back it up. How would you express to a Christian, fellow Christian, that, hey, I know you're not concerned with the outcome because we know the end. However, you should vote, and then fill in the blank.
The Bible is filled with examples of, we're looking at spiritual examples of life in this world. But they're actual political leaders. They're people that stood in their times to challenge the political winds, political powers at that time.
Right.
Moses, David, Joseph. They weren't just doing their quiet time. They were active in their arena that they were given. We are given a certain set, whether we're in our jobs, and doing our profession. We don't all do the same thing, but we do have one thing in common. We're citizens, and we have the eligibility to vote. And I think that's our duty as citizens living in this country, that God has given us this great gift of the United States of America, like no other country in this world, to take charge and be the ones that determine how our government acts and our policies that are made.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. You know, I tell you, it's one of those things where if you don't do it, you know, we get into this thing, if you don't do it, don't complain.
Right.
You know, it's not as simple as that, but yeah, but it does kind of like fit that model. You know, if we're not going to do it, then why are we complaining about the outcome? At least if we exercise it, we already know the outcome, but still it shows a good occupying until the Lord comes. I think it does.
You know, whether we do or do not, I think it's how we do it. God's ultimately in control.
Absolutely.
But he asks us to do our part. If we don't do our part, he'll use someone else, for sure.
Right.
But I'd rather be part of that solution, that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. God says, let your light shine before men so that men may praise your Father in heaven, right? Do our part.
Yeah.
Do what we're supposed to be doing and give God the glory. We don't have to say it, but other people will say it because they say they did a good thing.
Right.
They're doing what's right, and praise God for that.
To God be the glory.
Right.
Amen. Thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate it, my brother.
Thank you.
Special thanks to Mac and Adriel for their insight on this important topic. Our mission at Faith in Politics is to help you navigate the political landscape through the lens of faith, and we want to hear from you. If you want to see more programs like this, please consider partnering with us, both financially and prayerfully. And don't forget to let your faith determine your vote. And to do that, you have to register and vote. I'm Pete Klaproth for Faith in Politics. Join us Thursday at 6 p.m. for a new episode of Faith in Politics. Aloha.